Our mission at the RCC is that we are in the business of reclaiming lives, and we're an action-oriented coalition advocating for restorative, economic, systemic, and social change. And what we do is we stand with the silenced. We've discovered that there are many, 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 many people, far more people than you think, who are silenced, who are unable to talk about what's going on in our government services, what's going on inside the jail system, outside the jail system. For example, not only are the people who have been incarcerated silenced and afraid to speak because they can get in further trouble if they speak, but the people who are family members of people inside the system can be silenced because they don't want to put their incarcerated person or the person who is out on parole in the crosshairs of drawing attention to people. Then there are people who are silenced because they work in the system and they've sworn certain oaths of office to not talk about this or that or the other thing. So they have to live with oaths of confidentiality. And then there's people who work for the military or for the government who have basically sworn an oath to follow the leader, period. And I discovered this when I was working with, when I was running a political campaign, and I found out that people who work for a particular president or just work for the president, their government military, they can't say anything against the military or the politicians because it would be considered treason or voting, speaking against their loyal person. Then there's other people who are silenced because they work inside the system and their jobs are on the line. And then, I mean, there's just list after list after list. And eventually you get down to the bottom of the heap. There's only a few people who have the courage, the ability, and the knowledge to be able to speak up. But I want to go down and share with you that what our coalition does is that we help people who are dealing with the criminal justice system, or the criminal legal system as it's now being called, because we've discovered that our system is full of sand traps, bottlenecks, trauma traps, you name it, that keep people caught in the system. So we are developing, our website has these buttons that you can click and it will give you an idea of how your voice could matter, how we can work together in a web. And then we've started talking about it in the I Change Justice podcast. You can find that on Spotify. And we just posted an episode today about what's going on this week and how people can get involved. So that's just to start. And then this is a video that you can look up on our Restorative Community Coalition YouTube channel. And you can watch this one. And it's about why not to build big jails and to instead why to invest in people. So this video you can watch in its entirety. It's 21 minutes long, but I'm going to go back and I'm going to play you this one and you'll see why in a minute.
Is in the business to reclaim lives. It is striking that the prison population in this country has increased. It has quadrupled since 1970s.
I started the Restorative Community Coalition 7.5 years ago. When we started, we were the Reentry Coalition and we were the first in the state. 80% of our people in prison are nonviolent. 97% of the people in prison will return to community.
The last 5 years I've spent working with Irene Morgan and many different people in the community. We have interviewed hundreds and hundreds of people of all walks of life. I've been talking to criminals that I never expected to talk to, people who we label as criminals, but you know what I found out? They're just human beings.
One particular person that comes to mind said that she had been in jail dozens of times. By the time she was 21, she cost society $250,000, $250,000 in those 8 years while she was in and out of jail and prison. Within 5 months and $1,500, she was a fully functional citizen, a taxpayer, going to school, learning how to be the person that society expected her to be. And I believe it's our charge as society to help them be functional so that we can save tax dollars and, more importantly, lives.
I was in 5 prisons in 8 years, and I didn't receive a single day of treatment in any one of those prisons.
We do know that more than 2.7 million children in this country have at least one incarcerated parent.
I was really angry that my dad went to prison. I had a lot of problems in elementary school. I got in a lot of trouble. Didn't know how to socialize with kids. You know, I'd see other kids with their families and wondered why my family wasn't like that.
One of the things that I realized when I started looking at what it takes for a person who is been incarcerated, comes back to society and has to re-enter, I had no idea the barriers they face.
Going to prison is not punishment. Getting out of prison is when you get punished. And you can't just wake up one day and, and function like a normal human being if you've, spent the majority of your life behind bars. People don't get out of prison wanting to go back to prison. The people that don't want to get out of prison, they don't get out of prison. They stay there, trust me. The problem is that the longer people are locked up, the harder and harder it is to stay out of prison.
They need to be allowed to move forward in their life. The barriers are so huge that most people can't do it. That's why the recidivism rate is so high. Restorative justice is just simply the victim and the perpetrator and the community members that are involved get together, and the victim gets to be heard, gets to be understood.
Restorative justice is probably the most important thing in stopping the cycle. People truly do not understand the price that kids face when their loved ones are pulled out of their lives. I hate jail. I'll tell you, the hardest time in my life was having to touch my parents through glass.
At the root of all social dysfunction, at the root of our economic failures, at the root of what I call a societal depression, we have to eventually call a timeout, use restorative justice, use intervention techniques, use any tool we have to be able to stop the cycle of violence at the first point of intervention possible and turn it over and help people heal so that we can recover our society. The only option is to invest in empowerment, education, leadership, free enterprise, relationship training, conflict resolution. How do we actually help people become productive in society? That's a far better investment. The cycle of destruction, anger, punishment, addiction, absolutely does not work for anybody. If we turn it upside down, we can build, lead, and innovate change. We can do it, and we must. Thank you.
What really impacted me about this project was you just don't get taught about these things.
The disparity between how much money we as a society spend on those in prison versus how much we could be spending to help them re-enter society.
I never realized the impacts it has on the family of someone who's been to prison or jail.
So there's a series of additional podcasts that are in our website that you can go to if you click on here, jail tax abuse. This is an important series that movie that I talked about investing in people rather than a bigger jail. This one is a very powerful movie to watch, but this is a complete argument about what happened before. And then you can click here to watch or download the Noble Cause Corruption report. There's other reports in here, but there's a whole series of videos. This is a businessman, Rob Lieb, who was one of the panelists on our No Jail Tax presentation. This is Predatory Leadership by Matt Kramer. He's a private prison guard, and he's written a book called Understanding Predatory Leadership, and he was employed by CoreCivic and talks about why it's not a good thing. Follow the Money, David Camp, with an accountant. For some reason, I just see that his video is missing in action, but his articles in Northwest Citizen are still here. And he was an accountant who absolutely shared with us that if we pass this tax, our county would go bankrupt. This is a teacher, Western Washington University professor, who has a background in incarceration, in Black and various kinds of slavery and issues and prejudice. He was the person who was fighting for the Imagine No Cages of the abolitionist movement. Then we have Juliet Daniels. She has 20 years, 30 years in criminal defense, and she's an attorney from Texas who also got her law degree here and wrote a whole pile of articles in here about why it's an illusion that people are safe and free. And she's got some amazing pieces in here on mental health. And then she did some more more broader things that were amazing to understand what was going on in the Whatcom County justice system. And then Tip Johnson has been absolutely a hero in my mind. He gave me backup and courage, and he's done a lot of the work in understanding the economic problems from a citizen perspective. And then I close the argument down here. And this was one of the original PowerPoints that we did, one of the original conferences we did that taught us why we need to not do depreciation, but do appreciation as an investment in the community.